April 1943, Wright Field, Ohio. Dear Frank, there's a phrase around the base now. When a mechanic can't figure out what's wrong with an engine, the supervising officer asks, "Did you take it to Harper?" That's me. Staff Sergeant William Harper, the guy they bring the impossible cases to. It started small, one engine that stumped a few mechanics. Word spread. Harper figured it out, then another, and another. Now I'm the last resort, the mechanic they call when nobody else can diagnose it. When American aircraft are grounded and American mechanics are out of ideas. Last week, they brought me a B-17 engine. 4 different mechanics had worked on it. 3 days. Changed spark plugs, adjusted timing, rebuilt the carburetor, cleaned fuel lines. Everything they could think of. Engine still ran rough, power output low, tested normal on every diagnostic, but something was clearly wrong. They were going to send it to depot overhaul, 3 months turnaround time. That bomber would be grounded, crew would be reassigned, mission capability reduced. The supervising officer asked the question, "Did anyone take it to Harper?" They brought the engine to my station. I didn't touch it immediately, just had them run it. Listened for 15 minutes, didn't say anything, just listened. Then I told them, "Your intake valve on cylinder 7 has a hairline crack. You won't see it with visual inspection, too small, but I can hear the pressure loss during the compression stroke." The lead mechanic was skeptical. "Sergeant Harper, we did a visual inspection of all cylinders, no cracks visible." "I know, that's why you can't see it, but it's there. Pull cylinder 7, send the intake valve to metallurgy. They'll find it." They pulled the cylinder, sent the valve for microscopic examination. Hairline crack, invisible to the naked eye, only visible under magnification, but audible if you knew what to listen for. That's my job now, Frank. I find the problems other mechanics can't see. You want to know how I do this? How I've fixed over 200 engines that stumped other mechanics. Here's the part I haven't told you yet, Frank. The part that makes this story strange. I'm blind. I know. You're probably reading that sentence again? Wait, William is blind? Since when? Since March 15th, 1941. Almost exactly 2 years ago. I was 28 years old, aircraft mechanic, working on a B-17 engine at this same base, Wright Field. Hydraulic line ruptured, high pressure fluid, 3,000 psi sprayed directly into my eyes, both eyes. The pressure was so intense it caused immediate trauma. The base hospital tried everything, 3 different doctors, experimental treatments. Nothing worked. The damage was too severe. I lost my sight completely. Both eyes. Permanent, 28 years old, career aircraft mechanic, blind. The Army Air Force was going to discharge me. Medical retirement. Honorable, of course, with full benefits, with gratitude for my service. But I'd be done, finished, at 28. I asked for one chance. Let me try to keep working. If I couldn't do the job, I'd accept the discharge quietly. But give me 30 days to prove a blind man could still serve. The base commander, good man, fair man, agreed. 30 days. If I could demonstrate value, I could stay. If not, medical discharge with no argument. I had 1 month to prove I wasn't finished. The first week was hell, Frank. I won't lie to you. Everything I'd done for 15 years relied on sight, reading gauges, inspecting parts, following technical diagrams, visual confirmation of work completed, all gone. I couldn't see the engine, couldn't see the tools, couldn't see anything. I spent the first 3 days just relearning my workspace, where tools were located, how to find parts by touch, how to move around the hangar without tripping over equipment. Other mechanics helped. Good men. They didn't have to. Could have let me fail. Instead, they organized tools in consistent locations, guided me through the workspace, gave me time to adapt. That's America, Frank. That's what makes this country work. People helping each other. Not because they have to, because it's right. By day 4, I could navigate the hangar. By day 7, I could handle tools confidently. But I still couldn't diagnose engines, couldn't fix them. And that was the job. Day 8, they brought me a simple case. Pratt & Whitney R1830. Running rough, obvious misfire. They asked if I could identify which cylinder. I couldn't see the engine, couldn't watch it run, couldn't use diagnostic equipment. So I did the only thing I could. I listened, had them start the engine, stood next to it, closed my eyes, habit, even though it didn't matter anymore, and just listened. And Frank, I heard something I never really heard before. Each cylinder has a distinct sound, a rhythm. When one misfires, the rhythm breaks, the harmony disrupts. Cylinder 3. I told them cylinder 3 was misfiring. They checked. I was right. That was the moment I realized I can still do this, just differently. Over the next 3 weeks, I developed a system, a way of diagnosing engines without sight. Step 1. Listen to the engine running. Every engine has a baseline sound. Healthy engines sound smooth, harmonious. When something's wrong, the harmony breaks. You just have to train your ear to hear where the break is. Step 2. Feel the engine's vibration. Put your hand on different parts. Vibration tells you about balance, about internal stress, about components wearing unevenly. Step 3. Use temperature. Touch different sections. Hot spots indicate friction, restriction, or combustion issues. Step 4. Smell. Fuel mixture problems create distinct odors. Rich mixture smells different from lean. Burning oil smells different from coolant leaks. 4 senses: hearing, touch, temperature, smell. Replace the one sense I'd lost. By day 20 of my 30-day trial, I'd successfully diagnosed 12 engines. Not simple cases either. Actual problems that other mechanics had struggled with. The base commander called me in. "Sergeant Harper, your 30 days aren't up, but I've seen enough. You're not being discharged. You're staying on as a specialist diagnostic mechanic. The cases other mechanics can't solve, we're bringing those to you." I wasn't being retired. I was being promoted to specialist. That was 2 years ago, Frank. Since then, I've diagnosed and repaired 214 aircraft engines, not simple fixes, the difficult ones, the engines that stumped multiple mechanics, the ones that tested normal on all diagnostics but clearly had problems, the ones they were going to scrap or send away for months of depot overhaul. I found problems other mechanics couldn't see because I wasn't looking. I was listening, feeling, sensing. Let me give you examples. Real cases, so you understand this isn't exaggeration. Case 1. P-47 Thunderbolt, Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine. Mechanic reported power loss at high altitude. Tested compression, normal. Checked fuel system, clean. Examined supercharger, no visible issues. Engine ran fine at sea level. But above 20,000 feet, power dropped significantly. They brought it to me. I had them run it at full throttle, simulating altitude conditions with throttle position, listened carefully, told them, "Your supercharger impeller has blade erosion on the high pressure side. Can't see it because it's internal, but I can hear the airflow disruption. You're losing boost pressure at high RPM." They disassembled the supercharger, found microscopic erosion on 3 impeller blades, exactly as I'd described. Replaced the impeller. Engine performed perfectly. Mechanic asked me, "How did you hear that?" "We ran every test." Your tests measure outcomes. I listened to the process. The airflow disruption has a distinct sound signature. You learn to recognize it. Case 2. B-24, Liberator, Pratt & Whitney R1830 engine. Rough running, vibration. 3 mechanics spent 4 days on it. Replaced spark plugs, magnetos, ignition harness, rebuilt carburetor. Problem persisted. I listened to it for 5 minutes, told them, "Cylinder 9, exhaust valve not seating properly. Gap is microscopic, but it's causing compression loss and disrupting the exhaust pulse. They were skeptical. Valve looked fine visually, but they pulled the cylinder, sent the valve to be measured. Gap was 0.003 of an inch out of spec, barely measurable with instruments, but I'd heard it. New valve installed, engine perfect. Case 3. P-51 Mustang. Packard V-1650 engine, American-built version of the British Merlin. Mechanic reported intermittent power fluctuation. Sometimes ran perfectly. Sometimes lost power suddenly, then recovered. Impossible to diagnose. Problem was inconsistent. Happened randomly. Could spend hours testing and never see the issue. I had them run the engine through multiple power settings, listened carefully during transitions, heard a momentary disruption during throttle increases, told them, your fuel pump diaphragm has a small tear. Under low fuel demand, it works fine. Under sudden high demand, the tear causes momentary pressure drop before the pump compensates. That's your power fluctuation. They replaced the fuel pump diaphragm. Problem solved. Pilot flew that Mustang on 12 combat missions before returning home. Never had another issue. The crew chief wrote me a thank you note. You saved my aircraft and maybe my pilot's life. Whatever that momentary power loss was, if it had happened during combat, could have been fatal. You caught it on the ground. That's what I do, Frank. I catch problems before they become failures, before they ground aircraft, before they endanger pilots. I've fixed engines that were scheduled for scrap, engines that were going to be cannibalized for parts, engines that were written off as unfixable. I listen to them. They tell me what's wrong, and I fix them. The other mechanics don't understand it. They think it's magic, some kind of supernatural ability. It's not. It's just training. When you lose one sense, your brain compensates, makes your other senses sharper, more perceptive. But it's not automatic. You have to train it. I spent months, years really, learning to hear what others don't hear, learning what each sound means, what each vibration indicates. Let me explain how this works, the science behind it. Every engine is a collection of moving parts, pistons, valves, bearings, gears, shafts. Each part, when working correctly, makes a specific sound, a specific vibration. When parts wear, when they fail, when they operate outside tolerance, the sound changes. The vibration changes. Sighted mechanics can ignore these changes because they rely on instruments. Gauges tell them if pressure is correct, if temperature is normal, if RPM is on spec. If instruments say everything is fine, they assume it is. But instruments measure outcomes. They don't measure the process. I can't see instruments, so I measure the process directly. I hear the piston moving through its stroke. I feel the vibration of the crankshaft. I sense the temperature of the cylinder head. And I've trained my brain to recognize patterns. This sound plus this vibration plus this temperature equals this problem. It's like, you know how a musician can hear one wrong note in an orchestra? Even if the note is only slightly flat, most people wouldn't catch it. But a trained musician hears it immediately. That's what I do with engines. I hear the wrong note, the one element that's out of harmony, and I trace it to its source. The Army Air Force has started sending me to other bases, temporary assignments. When they have engines that multiple mechanics can't fix, they send for me. Last month I spent 2 weeks at a base in Florida. They had 6 engines grounded, all different problems, all stumping their mechanics. I diagnosed all 6 in 3 days. 4 were fixed on site. 2 needed parts that weren't available, but at least they knew what parts to order. The base commander thanked me personally, said I'd saved weeks of aircraft downtime, got his squadron back to full operational capability. That's the impact, Frank, not just fixing engines, keeping American aircraft flying, keeping pilots in the air, supporting the mission. Every engine I fix is one more aircraft available, one more bomber that can reach its target, one more fighter that can escort the bombers home. I can't fly, can't fight, can't do a lot of things I used to do, but I can do this, and this matters. You asked in your letter if I ever regret staying, if I ever wish I'd taken the medical discharge. Honest answer? No, never. Before the accident, I was a competent mechanic, good at my job, but ordinary. One of dozens of mechanics doing the same work. After the accident, I became something different, specialized, valuable in a way I wasn't before. I'm not saying the accident was good. I'm not saying I'm glad it happened. I miss seeing, miss 1,000 things sight gave me. But I'm more useful now than I was before. I'm contributing more, helping more, making a bigger difference. The Army Air Force didn't keep me out of pity. They kept me because I'm valuable, because I can do things other mechanics can't. That matters to me. Knowing I'm here because I'm needed, not because someone felt sorry for me. I've trained 3 other mechanics in diagnostic listening techniques. They're not blind, don't need to be. But they've learned to use hearing as a primary diagnostic tool instead of just relying on instruments. They're better mechanics now, catching problems earlier, diagnosing issues faster. Maybe that's my real contribution, not just fixing 200 engines, but teaching others that there's more than one way to diagnose problems, that instruments are helpful but not sufficient, that trained senses can detect what instruments miss. One of the mechanics I trained, young kid, 20 years old, told me last week, "Sergeant Harper, I heard a bearing issue today that I would have missed 6 months ago. Caught it before it failed. You changed how I work." That's legacy, Frank. Not the engines I've fixed personally. The mechanics I've trained, the knowledge I've passed on. When this conflict ends, and it will end, we're going to win, I'll go back to civilian life. Probably work in aviation somewhere. Commercial airlines, maybe. Or aircraft manufacturing. But these mechanics I've trained, they'll remember. They'll keep using these techniques. They'll teach others. And decades from now, some mechanic somewhere will diagnose an engine by sound and won't even know he's using a technique developed by a blind sergeant at Wright Field in 1943. That's how progress works. Little innovations, passed on, accumulated. I'm writing this letter because I want you to understand what happened, not the accident. That's just bad luck. But what came after? I could have given up, could have accepted the discharge, could have spent the rest of my life as a disabled veteran living on a pension. Nobody would have blamed me. I'd earned the rest, earned the right to stop working. But I didn't want to stop. I wanted to contribute, wanted to serve, wanted to be useful. The Army gave me a chance, 30 days to prove I could still work. I took that chance. Proved I could not just work but excel. That's the America I believe in, Frank, the one that gives people chances, the one that values contribution over circumstance, the one that judges you by what you can do, not by what you can't do. I lost my sight, but I didn't lose my value. I didn't lose my ability to contribute. I just had to find a new way to do it. And you know what? I'm better at my job now than I ever was before, not in spite of being blind, because being blind forced me to develop skills I never would have developed otherwise. 214 engines, Frank. 214 times I've heard what others couldn't see, found problems others couldn't find, fixed what others couldn't fix. I'm proud of that. Not proud that I'm blind. Nothing to be proud of in an accident, but proud that I adapted, proud that I found a way to keep serving, proud that I turned a disadvantage into a capability. That's what Americans do, right? We adapt. We overcome. We find ways to win even when circumstances aren't ideal. That's what makes this country work. Not superior resources, not better equipment. People, Americans who refuse to quit, who find solutions when others see only problems. I'm just one mechanic, one small part of a massive military effort. but I'm doing my part. Keeping aircraft flying, supporting pilots, contributing to the mission, that's all any of us can do. Find our role. Do it well. Help the people next to us. I'm blind. But I'm still a mechanic, still serving, still making a difference, and I'll keep doing it until this conflict is won and every American aircraft comes home safely. Write back when you can, Frank. Tell me what's happening on your end. I know you can't say much, sensors and all, but whatever you can share. Stay safe out there. And remember, if your aircraft engine ever sounds wrong, trust your ears. Instruments might say everything's fine, but if it sounds wrong, something is wrong. That's the first lesson I teach every mechanic. Listen to the machine. It'll tell you the truth. Your friend, Staff Sergeant William Harper, Diagnostic Engine Specialist, Wright Field, Ohio, United States Army Air Force, PS. You asked if I miss seeing. Honest answer? Every day. I miss seeing my wife smile, miss seeing sunsets, miss seeing the engines I work on. But I don't miss being ordinary, and that's the trade I made. Sight for significance, vision for value. I'd rather be blind and useful than sighted and average. Don't tell anyone I said that. They'd think I'm crazy. But you'll understand. Subscribe for more untold stories where Americans prove that limitations are only permanent if you accept them. Where one sense lost meant other senses sharpened, where disability became capability. This is what American determination looks like. Not giving up when circumstances change, but finding new ways to contribute.